Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 101 here on the Primetime Rundown, presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Alongside my co-host, Mike Szabo, Joey Jarzynka on hand with you live from Philadelphia tonight. Mike, good to see you, sir. How are things back home in New York?
Going really well. It's the main time of sports season. We're closing in on college basketball season. It's all getting real busy for us all, hectic days and whatnot. And it's great that we're back here on the show tonight. Lots to talk about.
Oh, there's no doubt about it, Mike. We've got an extremely busy show tonight. There's so much to discuss. Of course, we'll be talking right away about postseason baseball. We'll be talking about the game that's going on not too far behind me, actually, about 11 miles away from me. The Padres and the Phillies, game number 3 starts tonight around 7:30 Eastern on FS1. And then, of course, back home, the Yankees and the Astros, they head to the Bronx. Game number 3 gets started tomorrow at 5 p.m. We'll talk about their disastrous hitting, the disastrous bullpen, how the Astros are absolutely exploiting the Yankees and really what they're capable of doing. We'll be talking about early season National Hockey League surprises, in addition to, of course, recapping Thursday Night Football with our, unfortunately, Rob DeLuca's not here, but we always have to talk about Thursday Night Football just because it's actually a good game last night. I was very pleased and surprised about that. We'll get into that later on. Christian McCaffrey was traded in a deadline move to San Francisco. The 49ers got him for a whole bunch of picks. And, of course, Mike and I were at Big East Media Day, so we'll be discussing that, breaking that down to as much of our ability. But before we do get started, our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Be sure to download their newest album called Free Cake, out now. Play loud. Listen to them on the following platforms: Apple Music, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify. Mike, as we did say, we've got so much to talk about tonight. There's so much going on in the world of sports. But first, let's get things started. Padres, Phillies, game 3 going on in a few moments. This is a fantastic battle between a team all the way out west that was supposed to be, cruising their way to the World Series. And actually, our good friend Ian Schraier said, if the Padres can get past the Mets, they are World Series bound. And not only did they get past the Mets, they also got past the Dodgers too. They got past the Dodgers, and they did take one game against the Phillies. But then you look on the flip side and say, well, the Phillies, they got revenge from 2011 against the Cardinals, and then they took down the reigning World Series champs. And then they got one game out in San Diego, no less, Mike. This is a team that all of a sudden absolutely rejuvenated. They had fired Joe Girardi. They've got Rob Thompson in now. Yankees legend Rob Thompson, too, former bench coach of the Yankees. Big time stuff here, what's going on with the Phillies.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen a lot of this talk around, and I totally agree with it. Other than the coaching change in the middle of the season, honestly, this team screams very much 2019 Washington Nationals. It's a team that was, really, did not do well at all in the first half of the year. The pitching wasn't performing. The lineup was either inconsistent or was Harper getting hurt that really hampered them and whatnot. And all of a sudden, they've just really continued to, just turn it on in the second half. They figured it out. They got into a groove and went into the postseason hot. And they've just kept on rolling. Like you said, shockingly took down the Braves, who I thought were going to go all the way to the World Series. And, the Padres, the Phillies just seem like they found the groove. They've been ripping off wins, and they've gotten hot at the right time.
Yeah, this is absolutely unbelievable to see what's been going on. And now, this is their first NLCS trip, especially their first home game in the NLCS in almost 12 years. 2011 was 2010 rather, was the last time that the Phillies hosted in NLCS. And that, of course, was still the time when Mike was obviously still a little baby, but I'm sure he remembers Ryan Howard, the Jimmy Rollins era. He remembers Shane Victorino. Jason Worth had just departed for Washington, so he wasn't there. You also had Raul Ibanez the year after, rather. But then you also had, in that there, you had Cole Hamels, Jamie Moyer, Doc Halladay still. Those guys were really big at the time. And, that was really the end of that Phillies era that now we're looking back and saying 12 years later, this team has finally made some moves. And, Mike, I think I had said this plenty of times too, that I am such a critic of Dave Dombrowski, the general manager and team president, because of what he did in Boston, what he also did in Detroit too. But what he does is he tears down organizations from pretty much within, and builds them obviously by buying these players. And yes, it's a decent thing what he does, but at the same time though is that once their reign is done, they are in the toilet for many years to come. But what Dombrowski has done is truly remarkable.
Yeah, I think the main critic, just to go off what you're saying, is that he doesn't, whenever he finishes up his tenure, he doesn't leave franchises in a good spot. And he's put together good teams and whatnot, and whether it was Boston and winning in 2018 or the great years with the Phillies and whatnot. Once he's exited, it's been a lot of barren years for those organizations since.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about his ability, and able to put together good teams at least for a short period of time.
Yeah, it's really crazy to see again, because we remember when Boston had won the World Series back in 2018. He was the team's president, everything going on there. But I like I said, I'm really pumped to see with what goes on with the Phillies. Let's take a peek at their lineup too tonight. Game number 3, they're going to be sending out this lineup. It's going to be Kyle Schwarber, Rhys Hoskins, JT Realmuto. No surprise, Harper, Castellanos, Alec Baum, Bryson Stott, Jean Segura, Brandon Marsh, and Ranger Suarez, who, by the way, Ranger Suarez has been absolutely fantastic this season. And really, Mike, he's been quiet. He's been very quiet throughout much of the season. 10-7, a 3.65. His first start against the Braves in the postseason was very so-so. He was very, he couldn't get his command together. Three and a third innings of play. He simply could not get it to go. But I think the best part was he only allowed 1 run. And now with what he comes in, with the home crowd behind him, but he goes up against Joe Musgrove, who, as we know, for Mets fans alike, and Mets fans out there, they know all about Joe Musgrove and the ear stuff, and Buck Showalter trying to go after him. This is a Padres team that is out for blood, but can they do it against this really hot lineup right now? This might be one of the, at some point, Mike, a terrible lineup that you would say to yourself, yeah, this is a terrible lineup looking back, but no one would ever think that this is an NLCS caliber lineup, Mike.
No, and certainly with the way some of them were performing this year, where it was with Harper injured, it was really Schwarber and nothing else. It was a lot of inconsistency the rest of the way. Schwarber was I think led the NL in home runs this year. But everybody else, there was a lot of inconsistent play, and Harper being hurt for a good chunk of the season really seemed like it was going to hamper them before they went on this ultimate run. But a lot of these guys just got a lot about October is getting hot at the right time, and a lot of these guys in the lineup are getting hot at exactly at the time that you needed them to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's fantastic. The last time that Ranger Suarez faced San Diego was back on June 23rd. He allowed 2 runs in 7 1/3 innings of play. But now, you look on the other side and you look and see what Bob Melvin is really putting together here against Suarez and the Phillies. Ha-Seong Kim, the shortstop Juan Soto, Manny Machado, who has been absolutely lights out this postseason, Brandon Drury, Jake Cronenworth over at second, Will Myers over at first, Jurickson Profar, the left fielder, Trent Grisham in center, and of course Austin Nola, the catcher. I mean, this is a lineup from top to bottom, 1 through 9, is just so powerful. This is just absolutely wild to see with what's going on here with Manny Machado too. He's hitting over 300 just in the last 4 games.
Yeah, he's been the catalyst for most of their offense the entire year. Right up there in terms of batting average in the National League, and it's had a fantastic year overall. And this is really what San Diego is hoping for, a really high-powered lineup. Of course, the whole Fernando Tatis stuff that we get into in the offseason, kind of put a dent into their plans for the whole of the lineup. But it's still been a fantastic, 1 through 9 this year. The addition of Soto that, GM AJ Preller just, sent the kitchen sink at Washington for, has really been a fantastic piece to solidify this lineup.
Oh, yeah.
If he's not, at least if he's not absolutely slugging his way and getting hot and whatnot, he's getting on base and he's making a difference. And, these are two lineups that are really hot right now, really performing well. And, it's a real, in San Diego's perspective, a really high-powered lineup there that, again, it's all just going to be about execution. Who's going to execute better?
It's truly remarkable also to see with what Brandon Drury has done. And, there's been times also that you heard that, before, or I guess before the trade deadline, that Josh Bell was a big acquisition piece for somebody. We didn't know who it would be. And then he was paired up in that Juan Soto, that blockbuster Juan Soto deal. And now you're beginning to see the emergence now of Will Myers, who, I mean, Mike, do you remember when he was on Tampa? Do you remember when he was when he was a prospect with Tampa Bay? I know Ian does. Where is he?
That was way, way back when, as you say, I was a little baby. So
that is true. That is true. You see, you're catching on now. There's no doubt. But now Will Myers has now pretty much won that first base spot. That's a big deal. Brandon Drury now in a designated hitter. These players here who were at one point summoned to the bench, Will Myers, that was because of Josh Bell. He's now got this spot in here, and it's almost like it's a fantastic reemergence story to see with what Will Myers has done. But going back to the Phillies, just because our good friend Ian Schraier still on extended paternity leave, is watching us here. We truly appreciate him, being with us here during some times at home. So thank you. How dare Szabo dismiss the second half of Alec Bohm? That is very true. That is very true. Alec Bohm has looked pretty good, but also keep in mind too, Ian, and for all the folks out there watching, Jean Segura, after he came back from injury too, absolutely lights out. And that was a big deal too over there.
A lot of motivation for him to start picking it up. I think, was it 13 years in the big leagues for him? Hasn't seen the playoffs, and finally gets his shot here with Philadelphia. So a lot of motivation there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ian is actually right here. This is my fault. Sure do. Well, no, wasn't Will Myers a Royals prospect? Yes, he was. That's my fault. You know why? Because do you remember that was that 3-team deal with Tampa Bay? Steven Souza went over, I believe. That was the one. I think Steven Souza was a part of that deal. We'll definitely have the fact checkers check that for us. But something else too before we move on to to the Yankees and to the Astros, because of course tonight is all about the Padres and the Phillies, especially like I said, just 11 miles south of me. There's a ton of baseball going on, and we'll get to a fun fact in a few moments in terms of traffic. Mike and I spoke about it before, but the bullpens, Mike, the bullpens. We spoke about the bullpens months ago with the Phillies, especially. They had lots of problems. They had just traded for David Robertson. They thought that he was going to become what he was pre-COVID, and also pre-Tommy John surgery as well. They couldn't get back. They couldn't figure it out with him. And then all of a sudden, then they were able to get Dominguez, Alvarado, Sir Anthony Dominguez, also Jose Alvarado. Those guys have really come into play, but also the Padres too. Josh Hader, brand new life. We remember also when Josh Hader, I think again, Ian was talking about this too. We spoke about this off camera. Josh Hader was an absolute disaster at the end of his Brewers tenure. And Will Rogers, a lot of people said, well, you know what? We traded away Josh Hader because the Brewers didn't want to pay him because he still had one more year left. Will Rogers was a free agent at the end of this year. But, hey, listen, it's all turning around here, and Hader is beginning to look like his old self when he was with the Brewers.
Yeah, definitely. And, this is part of what the Padres were banking on, is that, Even though he had an ugly 12 ERA in the last month or so of his Brewers career,
Yeah.
was hoping to, bring him over to San Diego onto a contending team. Even though the Brewers were leading the division at the time, it seemed like they were getting ready to, they had a replacement there. Obviously, the financial concerns that you brought up too, that they didn't want to pay him. So even though that they were leading the division at the time, they were perfectly happy to move on from him. And again, sort of rejuvenate his career. We know the talent is always there, and there was certainly a hole there to fill with the Padres, and he's been looking absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and I think also a lot of folks also have overlooked the likes of JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber as well. We've seen so many times too this season where Kyle Schwarber has been booed, has been looked at as this 100 batting average hitter that simply can't get it done anymore. Is it done for him? Are things going, are they trending southward? Is JT Realmuto going to get this massive contract in Philadelphia that he ultimately deserved? And yes, I use it past tense because when he was so good with Miami, and then eventually traded to Philadelphia, he looked great in the first couple of seasons, but then eventually went downhill a little bit. Yes, he has rejuvenated himself as one of the best, if not the best defensive catchers in Major League Baseball. And he's doing it also on the offensive side of too. And then, it's truly remarkable to see this Philadelphia team that at one point they were under 500 with Joe Girardi. They were trending southward so badly. And then all of a sudden, Rob Thompson, who we really didn't talk about much, we said it in the beginning, who was on Joe Girardi's staff for many, many years with the Yankees, he gets a second chance with the Phillies, and now he finally gets a full-time managing position. They've removed the interim tag, and now he is leading this Phillies team. And you heard it also when Joe Girardi was fired, is that the locker room, or the clubhouse rather, it seemed a lot more energetic, a lot more alive. And they feel that Rob Thompson kind of brought that there. I want to bring up what Ian said also with something else too. He says lack of pen really hasn't mattered for the Phillies when Wheeler and Nola have been as good as they have. Add in a surging Harper, a struggling Soto, and there's your difference. Well, something else too. We can also now add in a really hot Juan Soto as well. He's finally finding his groove too. That's a big deal. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on here that on both sides that are. It's just that we can't really figure out the words for it. There's a lot of storylines on both sides of the ball. Both sides, or both teams rather. Let's keep moving forward here, Mike, and just something else too that we want to look at. It's truly remarkable to see, and I'll stop using that word because it's like the 8th and 9th time that I've used it today. Did you see the picture? Aaron Nola and Austin Nola's father had the Phillies jersey, the Padres shirt, I think, or the Padres hat too, right? Because you've got Austin Nola, the catcher, Aaron Nola, the pitcher. Yeah. Really, really cool stuff to see, these two guys going at it. Opposite teams, parents in the NLCS, no less. Yeah. Really, really unreal stuff to see with what's been going on there with those guys. Another thing to kind of just conclude this off here, fellas. Jurickson Profar too. He's got a foot injury, nagging foot injury. They're still keeping him in. I don't expect it to really play a factor in this, especially when the rest of the lineup is just outperforming everybody. Things look so great for him. Things look so great for the entire Padres order. And again, I want to bring that up too with what Ian said. This team is very, very in line, or they're progressing to be a World Series participant at this rate. And it's not because they're in the NLCS. Obviously, the next round is the World Series, but they have proven that this lineup can click.
Yeah, I think it's always been a really interesting matchup because it seems like they're fairly even teams. In terms of the lineup, they wind up You look through 1 through 9 in their lineup. You got great stars all over it who are performing really well. Soto hasn't really set the world on fire in San Diego. Maybe he sprinkles in a walk here or there, but Machado's done well. Bell has done well at times. Grisham was a postseason star, especially early on. And then you look on the Philly side of things. Harper, Castellanos, Schwarber's been fantastic. Bohm, as we mentioned, before. Bryson Stott has actually held down the shortstop position really well down there in Philadelphia. And then the pitchers. Both teams have really good, 1-2 pitchers, whether it's Musgrove and Darvish on one side and then Wheeler and Nola on the other, although Nola did not perform well the other night.
No.
And then they just they don't really have dominating bullpens, but somehow they figure out how to piece it together. And then you got Hader and Alvarado on the respective sides that have, returned to their old selves or just performed really well enough that there's your closer for this postseason. So it seems like they're really even. It's a really even matchup, and it's just going to be about who's going to execute better from here on out.
Absolutely. Well, we'll definitely take a peek again. 7:30 Eastern Daylight Time is the Padres and the Phillies FS1 game number 3 going on at Citizens Bank Park over in Philly. Before we get to the Yankees situation, because I know Mike definitely has a lot of grievances to air regarding that, what's really crazy here, and I know a lot of folks probably could care less, but this is something that I found absolutely crazy. And for those Philadelphia fans that are watching here would understand the pain if you had to drive through it. Thankfully, I didn't have to, but I had just missed it. In the sports complex, for those that do know, right off of 95, right by the Walt Whitman Bridge is the Citizens Bank Park, Lincoln Financial Field, also Wells Fargo Center, and also Live, Xfinity Live, in addition to Live Casino and Hotels. So you've got a whole bunch of stuff going on there, right? There are 3 events going on tonight in that sports complex, and I have never, in my time as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, I've been here during the 2008 World Series. Mike was only 8 years old, mind you. I went to the 2008 World Series. I didn't go to to the 2008 World Series when they had won. I didn't go to the game, but I was in the area for that, right? I had gone to a Flyers and a Eagles game. But be that as it may, the traffic. There's 3 events going on. There's the NLCS. There's Temple and Tulsa tonight. There's also Smashing Pumpkins as well, a concert going on there too. So for those that are watching here, we thank you. And if you are sitting in traffic and listening to us, I really hope that you get there and you find a spot, because there's not that much parking. There's a good amount of parking, but not that much parking. That's a lot. But yeah, crazy stuff going on over there. So if you're watching us from the parking lot or from sitting on the Walt Whitman Bridge, good Lord help you all. Guys, let's keep on moving forward here. Mike, let's keep on moving forward here. And I say, guys, I think Ian, because he is watching, but he doesn't want me. He wants me to stop talking because he's ready to get Szabo's thoughts on the shortstop situation for the Yankees. That's what's going on here. Mike, I think that we have to now have this chatter here about the shortstop situation for the Yankees. Mike, let us officially welcome in Mike's grievances. Mike, air them out, buddy. Air them out. The Yankees and the Astros, they head back to the Bronx tomorrow, 5 Eastern time on TBS. Game number 3, Astros are in front 2-0. The shortstop position is a little bit, to be determined right now, as is a few other positions.
Okay, so sounds like our grievances will be directed into that front first. This god-awful mess of what's going on the last few days. And shortstop position for the Yankees is the way it's just a microcosm for how things have been terribly handled by the Yankee organization and whatnot. So let's take you back to last offseason. The Yankees passed on every single one of the top free agent shortstops. The main ones you're thinking of were Carlos Correa, Corey Seager, Trevor Story. All were passed on, among others. All of those top free agents passed on because they believed in their prospects in their youth and whatnot, the 2 top prospects, and Anthony Volpe and Oswald Peraza. So what did they do? They decided to take on the albatross of a contract and Josh Donaldson, along with Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, to be their stopgap. Now, a stopgap. I don't know, Joey, look it up in the dictionary what a stopgap is. I mean, at some point, you got to start making the transition. Fine. Cashman, you want to use service time as a thing, even though you don't publicly say it. You know, they could have called up Peraza right after the service time thing wasn't a problem. Or other organizations would have moved up Volpe a lot quicker as well. But they waited their sweet time to call up Peraza and start making that transition. Yes, even though IKF had been solid in the regular season, you take the errors sometimes here and there. He was providing league average offense. But the errors started piling up a little bit more toward the end of the season. And oh my God, this cannot happen in a playoff game. What happens? It's happening in a playoff game. He's booting ground balls and whatnot and making errors left and right. It's really bad. And this all could have been avoided if they would have just made the transition in mid to late August, bringing in Peraza in rather than calling him up way later than they should have, and then treating him like a garbage journeyman that you get off the scrap heap on a, quote unquote waiver wire or whatever. And, using him as in a late game situation, pinch hitter, pinch runner, rather than a top prospect in your organization that is a glove first shortstop. What are we doing? What are we doing? He should have been starting from the moment he got called up. You couldn't given him 20 to 30 starts before the end of the regular season, and he could have been a real good contributor in this playoffs. Now, I think he should still be the starting shortstop in the playoffs. But for all those people who are going to say, oh, well, his bat's not that great. His bat's not that great. This and that and whatnot. Well, whose fault is that? It's the Yankees. He looked good in his short sample size in the regular season offensively. But still, this is the playoffs. He's playing against elite pitching and whatnot. I'm sorry, but your first start is being against Framber Valdez, who's going to be a top 3 guy in the Cy Young. What do you expect the kid to do? The Yankees have not set him up well for success, and they've started this whole issue of what's going on with their shortstop position when it all could have been handled better and avoided in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many grievances that have to be aired out, not only from you, Mike, but also from me too. And regarding that too, I have to agree with you, especially when you're taking on the money. You trade away Gary Sanchez, you trade away Gio Urshela, and you take on Josh Donaldson, who you think that you might be able to rebuild into the 2015 Josh Donaldson that we saw, who eventually became the AL MVP with the Toronto Blue Jays, right? We remember that very, very well. We have not seen that Josh Donaldson in ever. We have not seen it in 7 years because he's getting older. And he was already on the up. He was already on the uphill when Oakland had dealt him. He was already on the uphill. So when he was up in Toronto and he eventually had gotten hurt and then he was released and then he was down in Atlanta to get his career rejuvenated, and then he went to Minnesota. Things didn't work out too well for him there. And now we're seeing it. There were times kind of the way we saw it in Minnesota where, he would be able to, to get those clutch hits at times. But here in the postseason, Mike, it's been an absolute disaster over at third. It's been an absolute disaster over at shortstop as well. It has not been nice on the left side of that infield. We've gotten a chance to see the right side of the infield has looked pretty good. Now, obviously, you put Peraza in, right? And because and there were a couple of instances when he looked decent, in the field. We saw it yesterday, right? Game number 2, the first play of the game, right?
Decent. I think it was a little more than decent.
Yeah, it was. Well, keep in mind, the first at bat, the first pitch, right? The first pitch right? That was from Jose Altuve, right? And he hit that directly to Peraza. It was a low throw, good scoop though by Anthony Rizzo, right? We remember that. We saw that. It was, as Ron Darling said, right? It is the first time that a rookie, right, is playing in this, right? For him, meaning for him, not the first time rookies played it, but he is the first. He's the first. It's the first time that he's playing in the hole, mind you, at short, and he had to make that throw against an MVP like Jose Altuve. It's very tough. Is it too late to be making this, or kind of pulling the puzzle apart and trying to repiece it together with these guys, Mike? And I think that the answer might be yeah, especially when you look at the postseason picture and you say to yourself, Houston is up 2-0 already against the Yankees, and we know all about their history in the ALCS, and it's not a good one. I just saw a stat a couple of moments ago, Mike, at home in Minute Maid Park for the Astros. They all time against the Yankees in the ALCS, they are 8-1.
Yeah.
8-1. And that scares me, because the Yankees, if they were to win all three, we would have a 2017 on our hands. We could potentially have a 2019 on our hands, where, the series shifts back and things go south, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
It's tough. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this in a lot of chats and whatnot. I just haven't been optimistic from the beginning with this series, as much as I'm always going to air out grievances and gripe about this team because I'm a fan of them. But I've just seen nothing to suggest that this series is going to be different than the other playoff series that they've had against the Astros the last couple of years. Their hitting is not performing well. They wind up, striking out left and right. The bullpen gives up a run here or there. But mainly it's the offensive struggles and whatnot. And they continue to struggle they can't buy a win in Houston. It's as much as people say Tropicana Field is a house of horrors, Minute Maid Park, will scare the living bejesus out of you with the way the Yankees play there. It's the same story this year. They just cannot buy a win in Houston. And in order to win this kind of series, to get, to the World Series, you have to win on the road. And they just can't do it in Houston for a multitude of different, and for all the reasons that, we've said so far and what we'll get into, I just don't see how this series is going to be any different than, 2017 or 2019 when the Astros beat them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And especially too, you're seeing the disastrous hitting on full display. You're hearing about, obviously, from Aaron Boone, that the roof was open. The roof was open, Mike. Why? Let me ask you this, Mike. I need to ask you this. Why are you saying this in your press conference? Why? What are you doing? What is the matter with you? Why are you saying this? Okay, we've got a problem here. Okay, you know what? This is what I think about it. Okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is unheard of. Now you're yelling at umpires. Why? Because the roof is open. Don't you play in the Bronx? Don't you play in the Bronx, and especially in October when it's cold? Yeah, okay, granted, the ball goes sailing, but come on. Really, come on. And on top of it, you see, look, report is already that the roof will be open for Game 3. I mean, hey, listen, that's very good. That's very good. Hey, listen, the roof's gonna be open. Hell, they might even take the roof completely off, so there's no obstruction at all. What a disaster. Because Aaron Judge's home run was missed by a grand total of what, maybe, I don't know, 10 centimeters? 10 centimeters?
Oh, my God.
I mean, really? Why? Because you're doing that, now you're coming up with excuses? I'm watching here, or I had on, before we got on the air, Mike, the FS1 pregame show with Burkhart, A-Rod, Ortiz, and Frank Thomas. And that was the first thing that they brought up. And Alex Rodriguez has said this too. He says, granted, he absolutely struggled in the month of October, in the few times that he did play in October. He never complained. You never heard that, especially from your manager. And that, to me, signals very, very, very bad stuff on the horizon, especially throughout this series. It signals to me that the manager is losing hope, not only in the team, but just the way that this series is going. But it just, I don't know the word. It starts with an E. I think exhumes is the best word to say. It exhumes a bad aura from your manager that you come up with that. And I don't want to hear that it's a poor choice of words. What you say first is really what you mean. And I'm not trying to get all psychological here. And I'll use this example later on when we talk about hockey. I mean, Mike, this is all joking aside, though. This is not something you want to hear when you're playing against Houston. Houston is now
right in front of us.
In your head. They're living in your head rent free.
But Joey, it's right in front of us. Listen, Boone is just absolutely on so many levels. He's an absolute joke of a manager. We can talk about the bad lineup decisions. We can talk about the bad bullpen moves, whether it's called up from Cashman on his high horse up there in the owner's box or whatever, or how much control Boone has over it or whatnot. That's a conversation for another day. But he's an absolutely god-awful manager on so many levels, and these comments just take the cake. It just exemplifies that they just don't have a backbone. They have a terrible mentality, this team. He's blaming he's worried about the wind and I think Severino was talking about the exit velocity. Who cares?
Yep.
Like, what are we talking about? He was unlucky. All you have to say is, damn, we were unlucky. He missed the home run by a couple feet. We haven't performed well and are striking out of our shoes left and right. Maybe we need to do better with that. That's all you need to say. Some less cynical version of that in a press conference.
It's true.
It wind up being like, the wind and the exit velocity. I think it is telling that the one man behind the flyout, Aaron Judge, has been silent in terms of that. I think it's terrible coming from the manager. A lot of the stuff, whether it's the wind and all sorts of other comments, it exudes mediocrity and just a loser mentality about all these excuses and whatnot. And just going beyond these comments, some of the lineup decisions and the bullpen moves that he made just in the series alone just gets you going. I thought he finally did a good job and gained a little bit of a pair when he put Bader at leadoff last night. I think they needed a little bit of a shakeup, but still throwing out Donaldson at third. And the one reasoning being before yesterday's game, having him in the lineup, he was like, oh, well, I saw he had the late walk in game one, and that was encouraging. And it's like, what? Okay, I get the first time Donaldson went up, he had a hit on Valdez, but then it was like nothing the rest of the way. The man can't recognize a curveball from a fastball anymore. The bat speed's nowhere there. He does his best impression of Todd Frazier 2017. I mean, I don't know what to say anymore about this guy. How do you not sit Josh Donaldson? How do you not, if you're going to keep him in there, how do you not move him around the lineup? This is managing 101. It's, not having the, going back to the shortstops. It's not having the Perazzas in and managing that situation. Still keeping Donaldson in when you could have a guy who's performing a little bit better coming into the postseason and a Gold Glover at third base and IKF, or, shake something up. So many things with the lineup. It just so off. And the bullpen decisions, game one, I'm sorry, but he treated that like it was a how do I want to say, just a throwaway game, like a punt game. There you go.
Yeah.
That no matter what was going on, it was gonna be Trevino, gonna be Schmidt, gonna be Trevino, whatever. No matter what it was, that's not how it works in the postseason. Your choices have to be dictated by the game situation, and there's no such thing as a punt game in the ALCS. You're 2 losses away from going out and golfing. How? I don't understand how he has 3 generations of baseball in him, and he still seems to have a lack of feel for the game and these sort of things. In game 1, let's just take game 1 for example here. The bullpen moves. He brings in Clark Schmidt for Tyone when he gets into trouble. What was that, in the 5th, 6th inning or something? Schmidt should not have been in that position because Clark Schmidt's been bad against lefties this year, and you had Alvarez and Tucker coming up. You intentionally walk Alvarez, then Bregman walks. You have bases loaded, 1 out. Okay, great. You were lucky Schmidt got into the double play and got out of this inning. Then you tried to get cute and steal some outs. And then you put Trevino in there, who's been your best reliever for the last month. He should have been in when Schmidt was in. And then, you got lucky by not doing the correct move. And then you still tried to get cute the next inning and steal some outs out of Schmidt, who they have absolutely mistreated him. He's not a high leverage reliever because they haven't built him out as such. They've moved him up and down the minors and whatnot. And, we had the conversation in July and August about how good he was, how he should be up consistently and all that sort of stuff. And again, just not setting up guys for success. And that's another case right there. Trevino, again, it's in the wrong spot. And then, you wind up, down the line and whatnot. The other series, he made, weird bullpen moves that, ultimately they worked out because they got past the Guardians. But, just Boone has just been such a bad manager, just so far in terms of the moves he's made, the comments he's made and whatnot. And it's just absolutely horrible, the state of affairs with him.
Just because we still have about another 3 minutes here on this topic. So Ian does say his wife, Christine, courtesy of Christine Schraier, exudes is the word. So I said exhumes, you said exudes. Christine, thank you very much for that comment. So going back to what, Mike, you had brought up, and obviously, now you've cooled down for a few seconds. One thing I want to, and I still want to stay on this Yankees topic for another 2 minutes, just because, you brought up the bullpen. We have to realize, though, obviously, that, Mike, when you do make a call to the bullpen, obviously, you're out there, right? But it seems as if that your bullpen choices are an absolute disaster, right? And you noted that, but the whole thing, though, Mike, is that when Boone makes a call to the bullpen, right? Obviously, the one thing that we can't blame him with are the players that are in the bullpen, right? And the one thing that I say that Aaron Boone, and not only him, but really the brass, right? We have not been on the air since, I think, a couple of weeks ago, right? Which was our 100th episode. So the Yankees did not play yet, right? So we did not talk about Aroldis Chapman. We did not talk about how Chapman now is no longer there, right? So that is in addition by subtraction, right? Less is more is what they say, right? So Zach Britton, not there. Aroldis Chapman, not there. Scott Efros, who has lots of years of control, about, I believe, 3 years of control with 2 years of arbitration eligibility after those 3 years. So I think it's like 5 or 6 years. You lost him to Tommy John surgery, which means you lose that full year of team control next year. And they'll get him back in 24. And then you also lose Michael King, who had that broken elbow, which now there's a lot of rumors going around that he may need Tommy John surgery as well. So a lot of the bullpen now is literally piecemeal. Granted, the choices that Boone makes, right? The choices that Boone has made, they're not, they're not liked by the fans, right? They're not liked by us. How much more does Boone have? What is he capable? What is he supposed to do with what he's got? Granted, some of the decisions that he's made, but there's a lot of things that are out of his control, and that includes the personnel.
In terms of how much does Cashman have a call? Have control over over calling to the bullpen and who's coming in and whatnot. I get there's been injuries and he's working with a certain group of personnel, but as we were talking about before with the Schmidt situation and whatnot in Game 2 and whatever, he's not putting guys in the right position. I'll point out this is one example I'll point out from the last series. I think it was Game 3. where Cleveland winds up scoring 3 runs in the bottom of the ninth and walked it off, where he absolutely mismanaged the ball. I believe it was Severino pitching there. Bad defense leads to Severino. Probably he could have gone at least another out or two if it wasn't for, again, IKF's errors and whatnot. So he brings in, I believe it was Jarzynka. I think Jarzynka he only went like 7 pitches. Trevino was used for 1 out. And those have been your 2 best relievers in the past 3 weeks. That's what you're doing? And then you expected Wandy Peralta to go 3 innings? Like, I get he's working with limited personnel, but the choices on how he's been using them has been absolutely terrible. And yet, individually, when you break them down individually, they've been performing well. I have 0 complaints with the pitching in this playoffs. 0. Zilch. They've done their job. They keep this team in games. It's the offense that's been horrible. And then, of course, we talk about the bullpen choices, the order of where stuff has been put into. But mark my words, the number one reason why the Yankees probably next week will be heading out onto the golf course is because of their offense.
Yeah, which is really crazy to think also. And one last thing before we move forward here. We spoke about this off camera, Mike, about there was a tweet that was sent out, or actually that you had said regarding the home run ball. I had made a comment where I actually want to pull this back up here. I'll read it to all of you just because I didn't have time to cut this out. But Evan Roberts from WFAN tweeted this 9:28 a.m. this morning. In the 15 ALCS games between the Yankees and the Astros, when the Yankees get out-homered, they are 0-7. When they out-homer the Astros, they are 5-1. When they hit the same amount of home runs, they are 0-2. So, Mike, my question to you is that when you hear that, to me, that almost sounds like that the Yankees live and die by the home run, which is kind of the case, right? They get the Bronx Bomber mentality from that, but you look from years past, right? During the Core 4 era, they had gotten clutch hits. They had gotten, and keep in mind too, right? We remember Aaron Boone, obviously, right? The clutch home run, right? The ALCS against Boston. Obviously, granted, it was a home run, but there were other clutch hits that the Yankees were able to get aboard. And here you're seeing this. From 2017, really 2019, and now 2022, you're seeing this Yankees team is simply not getting the clutch hits. They're not getting really contact. Now, I understand that DJ LeMahieu, who is a 2-time batting champ, is on the IL. But someone else has to, step up, don't you think?
See, this is where I hate this conversation because contact and whatnot, and contact versus power hitting and whatnot. They don't make hitters like DJ LeMahieu anymore. It's plain and simple. The way guys are developed and whatnot, those hitters don't exist. This is a Major League Baseball nowadays it's becoming very home run oriented. If you're not going out there to with a mindset to hit a home run, you definitely have the capabilities to either way. I think the difference with the Yankees is it's just there's too much of an approach of being obsessed with exit velocity and whatnot and all that sort of stuff, where it's probably emphasized to way too much of a degree compared to other teams in the league. But let's not mistake the fact that it's like, oh, well, they don't have enough guys like DJ LeMahieu putting balls in play and all that sort of stuff. Cashman did make personnel moves this year to do that. Earlier on in the season, Trevino was big on that, and in RBIs, a lot of them on the ground and whatnot. IKF was honestly the best guy in runners and scoring position the entire year. Of course, when Benintendi came over, that helped. LeMahieu was fairly league average, sort of plugged away and did his thing in terms of, that avenue. But they seem to have gotten better at that part, at having a little bit more of a mix of the home run compared to the contact. But I don't know. I just never liked the conversation because it's where the the game is going, where it's more home run oriented and whatnot. And it's like based on that tweet by Evan Roberts, it's like Houston's beating them by home runs. It's just execution. Yankees just aren't executing. And that just goes down to personnel, whether that's in-game coaching and whatnot, and developing these guys in terms of hitting and how they want them to hit or something like that. But it's just that they're not hitting. You can say, oh, well, if they're not hitting home runs, they're not hitting at all. You can say that for a lot of teams sometimes around the Major League Baseball. At this time of year, it's just who's executing the most. And for whatever reason, that goes deep into the minutia of baseball and baseball fundamentals and how you approach an at-bat and whatnot. Yankees just aren't executing no matter what. And that's been true of this postseason and the last few.
Before we move on, Ian says, bad manager who has won close to 100 games. I'd really hate to have that. Mike, would you like to respond?
Take your regular season trophy and go home.
Oh, man. Well, one more Major League Baseball update. Kyle Schwarber, leadoff home run for the Phils in the bottom half of the first, and Citizens Bank Park is absolutely going bongos from what I can see on the TV next to me. What a blast off of Joe Musgrove into the stands in right field. So the next thing that we're going to just bring up here rather quickly, Gold Glove Award finalists. There's a whole bunch, and the reason why we're doing so is because our good friend Casey Bryant, his favorite player of all time is Tomas Nido, who is a catcher for the Mets. And he is actually a Gold Glove finalist, National League for as a catcher. We'll read you the rest. The American League right fielder Jackie Bradley Jr., Max Kepler, Kyle Tucker. In center field, Cedric Mullins, Miles Straw, Michael A. Taylor. In left field for the American League, Andrew Benintendi, Stephen Kwan, Brandon Marsh. I think Kwan runs away with that one. Third base, Matt Chapman, Jose Ramirez, Ramon Urias. The shortstop, Xander Bogaerts, Carlos Correa, Jeremy Pena. Who, of course, we got a chance to see, a lot of Pena's star-studded stuff in the early going, already on full display in the ALCS. Second base, Andres Jimenez, Jonathan Scope, Marcus Semien down in Texas, and, of course, first base, Luis Arias, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Anthony Rizzo for the also catcher, forgot about that too, Sean Murphy, Cal Raleigh, and Jose Trevino. For pitchers, Jose Barrios, Shane Bieber, Jameson Taillon, utility DJ LeMahieu, Whit Merrifield, and Luis Rengifo. The NL side of things is pretty star-studded. Mookie Betts, Juan Soto, Dalton Varsho from Arizona. Center field, Trent Grisham, Victor Robles, Alec Thomas, Ian Happ, David Peralta, Christian Yelich, the left fielders. Third baseman, Gold Glove finalist Nolan Arenado, Ke'Bryan Haynes, Ryan McMahon from Colorado. The shortstops, Hae-Sung Kim, Miguel Rojas, Dansby Swanson. The second baseman's Jay Cronenworth, Tommy Edman, Brendan Rodgers from Colorado. First base, Paul Goldschmidt, Matt Olson, Christian Walker as well. And the catchers, as we did say, last but not least, Travis d'Arnaud, Mets legend Tomas Nido, and JT Real Muto. The pitchers, Tyler Anderson, Corbin Burns, and Max Fried from Atlanta. Utility players, last but not least, as we did say, Brendan Donovan from St. Louis, Tommy Edman also from St. Louis, and Dalton Varsho from Arizona. So we've got a good crop of Gold Glove finalists. I cannot wait to see who wins potentially their second, third, fourth, whoever it may be. There's a lot of good stuff with baseball there, especially a lot of good players there. On the Gold Glove list. Mike, let's keep moving forward here. National Hockey League, there's a lot of good teams in the early going, a lot of teams that were supposed to be good. They don't look good so far. A lot of teams that were supposed to be really bad but have really looked great. A lot of early surprises, Mike, a lot of early surprises that are really getting our eyes to really open wide here. These teams now, is it a flash in the pan? Is it a hot start? Can they sustain it? Your early surprises through the first week of of the NHL season.
And my surprise is the Buffalo Sabres, who, 3-1, 6 points, second in the Atlantic Division. And, they have some big wins already this season, taking down Calgary.
Last night, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some pretty big wins there just with those two alone. So kind of shocking there. I think their situation is probably just more of a hot start to the year. I don't think they'll probably sustain it, but really intriguing so far. Right away to be off to that hot of a start and take down two really strong caliber playoff teams, and one that many will have, those two, Edmonton and Calgary. That is, some will have them in the Stanley Cup final conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good teams that we're seeing now that were supposed to be pretty bad. And one of which is the Montreal Canadiens. They were supposed to be a laughingstock, an embarrassment, a completely rebuilding team, and not a retooling team, a rebuilding team. But I said this actually on Tyler Adele's show on Sunday Sauce about Montreal, that I thought that they were not going to be good. I thought they were going to be ranked in 8th place. I still think they are. Can they sustain this 3-2 start? I don't think so. Obviously, they have a gazillion holes from top to bottom, but what they are doing here is remarkable. You're seeing them. They came out and won against Toronto. They came out and won, absolutely dominated Arizona. But again, it's Arizona. They dominated there. They continue to put on a show, though, from guys who we have not heard from in ages, Mike, in absolute ages. Guys like Jonathan Drouin, Evgeny Dadonov, Sean Monahan, a player who was on the IR for so many months in Calgary. And then he was traded for, him atualongside a 2025 conditional first-round draft pick from Calgary, was sent over to Montreal for future considerations. Got that mixed up there. So those are all the positives there that we are seeing from Montreal, and the goaltending play also from Jake Allen has been absolutely exquisite. He's looked great. The defense has really looked surprisingly decent as well. And someone else too that really has been a non-factor, who a lot of folks thought that he might be, is Michael Matheson, who was traded in the Jeff Petrie deal. Matheson went from Pittsburgh to Montreal. Petrie went the other way to Pittsburgh. He's been out due to a lower body injury. He'll be out for about 6 to 8 weeks. But then you also look at other guys like, they're getting contributions from everywhere. Uri Slafkovsky, the number 1 overall pick, scored his first NHL goal yesterday. Cole Caulfield looks the part. Josh Anderson, he scored that game-winning goal with 17 seconds to go against Toronto. This is a team that, is finding ways to win. And Marty St. Louis, I mean, this man not only was a legend on the ice, a legitimate legend on the ice, he's now becoming, this big time coach, and he's doing it with a whole bunch of misfits that are just in Montreal as pretty much trade bait. Most of the guys that I listed there are pretty much trade bait. I want to look back and say to all of you too that, yeah, Montreal could potentially, keep this going, but it's not going to happen. You've got 3 guys that are on expiring contracts: Sean Monahan, Jonathan Drouin, and Evgeny Dadonov, who will be traded. There is no doubt in our minds. That's $18 million that will be shipped off by the time March 1 rolls around. There's no ifs, ands, or buts there. And why? Because this team is rebuilding. This team is not in the area of saying, all right, we're going to re-sign these guys, we're going to keep them and, potentially buy or whatever the case is. No, this team is beginning to tear it down, and they're going to be building around the Nick Suzuki's, the Brendan Gallaghers of the world. And, depending if the price is right, Josh Anderson, we'll see if there was a lot of talk that Anderson may be on the move, but again, this is a man that he can put up the clutch goals. And again, he did it on opening night against Toronto. So they are my surprise team. So we move forward and we go now up north the Turnpike, and we go to the full Rangers, Devils, Islanders roundup. And Mike, I want to start with you with the Rangers last night. Again, It was against the Sharks. They booed David Quinn, which we'll get to in a few moments, but karma came back to bite him, no doubt about it, because of the way that the third period went. And that was not too long after the boos came about. So whatever. But the Devils, they beat the Islanders yesterday. Islanders look extremely slow. Devils look fast. They look really good. Give them about another year, and I am very scared to see what they are capable of. But the Rangers, though, let's start with them. They look good against Tampa. They look good against Anaheim. They did give up a couple of bad goals. But there's, again, not a lot of depth in Manhattan right now with this Rangers squad. And not a lot of cap space either.
Yeah, it's kind of the start of the year. Probably you could sum it up good, bad, and ugly. You've seen a little bit of all three. As you said, my father's favorite Western movie, The Good, the Bad, and Ugly. You've seen it all with the Rangers so far to start off the year. Opening night, a fantastic win against your Eastern, who you lost in the Eastern Conference Finals in the Tampa Bay Lightning. Nice, great win to start off the season and whatnot. They looked solid. Good solid win on Anaheim, even though a couple of bad goals, especially late on and whatnot. A downright ugly game last night against the Sharks. I will take Ian's word for it because obviously we were locked in on the Yankees, but that you just even look at the shots, 14-2 in the third period, and Gerard Gallant's comments as well about how much of a disaster it was. That was just downright ugly. But I have two rules when it comes to hockey in the regular season. If you're going to lose, do it in overtime. And if you're going to play that badly as what they were doing last night, do it early on so you can figure it all out. In terms of the cap space, I mean, yeah, this is what, we've been facing the last year and a half or so with the Rangers, trying to maneuver around this cap, the short bridge deals and whatnot, and how Chris Drury's been able to get around this. And that, of course, culminated in Dryden Hunt being sent down, and then he didn't make it through waivers and getting claimed by the Colorado Avalanche yesterday. And that, make what you will, Dryden Hunt, everybody can be, all criticism and whatnot. A solid fourth liner that gets the job done. And, it's someone that you don't love seeing go, but it allows the Rangers, by the time the deadline to come around, to open up $4 million in cap space. And in hockey, cap's king, unfortunately, with the Rangers situation that they're in. And it's just not something that they can avoid. And, it's going to be really interesting to see how Gallant pieces that fourth line together as they go throughout the season, because it's not that the fourth line is ever a set group, but there's going to be a lot of changeover, a lot of rotation throughout the season in that bottom six, fourth line group.
Yeah, and not only that, too, something that I brought up, but again, I'm not showing my bias here, anything along those lines. Don't get me wrong. Do I want to see the Rangers win? Not even close. But what I do know is that, again, depth is king as well, in addition to cap space, too. And exactly what Mike did say, yes, because of the accrual of cap space and everything along those lines, that is something that it's a win-lose. And the win part is that, yes, you're going to accrue that cap space. That's a nice thing. But the lose part is that if the Rangers do get hurt in any way, shape, or form, they don't really have much depth to call upon. That's the problem that a lot of folks are not realizing, is that there's not a lot of depth behind at one point with Dryden Hunt, because now you're going to be forced to rely on some of these kids down in Hartford that if they can't get it going, if let's say, for instance, one player goes down, first off, the Rangers don't really have much center depth to begin with, right? They spent all of that on Vinny Trocheck. They spent that money there. Their depth on the wing is very tough, especially on the right side is very tough, but they're piecing it together right now. And that's a solid thing for them. They didn't look great in Winnipeg. They looked fantastic in Minnesota. But then again, I've said this plenty of times. Minnesota, $14 million in dead cap. They've had to do whatever. They're going to be a disaster. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. For the next 3 years until the $14 million goes away off the dead cap, they're going to be a disaster. But the Rangers, though, they've got some work to do. And yesterday you saw it too. They simply did not play defense either. That was a tough part too. They couldn't play defense. It didn't look good. It did not look good. But again, nothing where really folks should be going crazy about it. It's not great. Couldn't be more wrong about Winnipeg.
Definitely agree with you.
Well, let me tell you something. I couldn't
robbed.
be more wrong about Winnipeg. Say it again, Mike.
They got absolutely robbed up there in Winnipeg. They got a taste of their own medicine. That guy turned into Igor that night.
They did. But Connor Hellebuck, let me tell you something. I couldn't be more wrong. Let me tell you something. You know who could be wrong? You know who could be wrong? A former Vezina Trophy winner. Okay, he did it. It was fantastic. San Jose was really their first bad game for arguably 60 minutes.
Yep.
It's fair. It's definitely fair. It's fair. But again, you know what? Scoreboard doesn't lie. They lost 4-1 to Winnipeg. The next thing here also, and Ian, you can say whatever you want. They lost 4-1 to Winnipeg. They lost. They couldn't get it done. If they were the better team in 60 minutes, they would have scored at least one more goal. So you couldn't be more wrong. Next thing here also, let's keep moving forward. The 21st, let's see. The next game for the Rangers, they now play Columbus. And that's a good game to go up against on Sunday because Columbus is an absolute dumpster fire. It's not good. They don't look, listen, they don't really look the part. They don't really look the part. That's the problem. You signed Johnny Gaudreau. They've got a whole bunch of players that, again, in my opinion, are absolute misfits. There's a lot of hope for Columbus when they sign Johnny Gaudreau, but he's going to be a difference. But is he the difference maker? No, I don't think so. He makes a difference, but he's not going to take you from 65 points or 70 points or 75 points all the way to 100. He's not going to do that. He's going to give you, I would say, maybe another 10 points, at max 15. But still, from 70 to 85, that's still not a playoff contending team. So the Rangers will probably get back on the horse there on Sunday, and shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Yeah. Plus, the Blue Jackets are coming on a back-to-back. Tomorrow they're playing Pittsburgh.
Yeah, exactly, and especially against Pittsburgh too. That is no cakewalk. Looking at the Devils, though, Mike, they look fantastic. They look fast. They are fast. Yesterday, they outshot the New York Islanders in the first period, 14-0. The Islanders simply could not get their feet under them. The Devils, they look great. Andre Palat looks good. Mackenzie Blackwood, who's also playing for a brand new contract, looks good. Again, they are led by Lindy Ruff, who is the winningest coach in Sabres history. There's a lot of talk, obviously, from our good friend Rob DeLuca. Where are they? The fire Lindy Ruff chants. They weren't there last night. They look pretty good, but this team has a lot of cap space. They actually don't have much cap space, rather. But despite not having that, they are 1 year away, in my opinion, from absolutely blowing everything wide open in a positive way, where they're going to start buying guys and they're on the right track. They're re-signing these guys like a Nico Hischier or like a Jack Hughes. Now they've got Andre Palat in there for that leadership role. They've got a whole bunch of players that have UFA status at the end of this year. Jesper Bratt's going to need a new contract. Igor Sharangovich is going to need a new contract. Miles Wood is going to need a new contract as well. We'll see how that will all turn out. You and I and DeLuca, we spoke with NHL staff writer of the Devils, Mike Morial, excuse me. He brought up to us how, despite them getting the work done business-wise, Miles Wood, he still thinks that is a possibility that just maybe they could get something going for the future. I don't know how that'll work, but definitely could be. For the Islanders, though, they look old. They look old. There's no way, shape, or form to go about it. They played bottom feeder teams and they won against San Jose and Dallas against Anaheim. And they do not look the part against a young, fast team. A young, fast team, it simply is not good. It's not good. Lane Lambert has not called out the team, but he has said that he will make some adjustments. This team is going to build off of this loss, and they're going to keep looking at it. But at some point, you have to keep moving forward. You just have to move forward and say to yourself, brush it off. And again, this coming Wednesday night hockey, Islanders Rangers at UBS, the only game on Long Island between those two this season. So that's a big deal. And also it's on national television too. Islanders have to wake up. Otherwise, the Rangers will definitely come in there and, with the fan base behind them, as again, it's a short drive, short train ride. And they'll make it MSG 2.0. That's the unfortunate reality that Islanders fans have had to face, and Islanders have no time to relax. They're down in Florida tomorrow. They've got Tampa Saturday night, and then on Sunday they've got the Florida Panthers again. And keep in mind, they lost them on opening night 3-1. Not a good start to the season. So positives from the Rangers and the Devils, not too much from the Islanders, but let's stay here on the hockey world, Mike, just because here down in Philadelphia, things look absolutely fantastic for the Flyers. And do we remember, I think we sent memes to each other, when John Tortorella was hired, and, there were some guys that were laying on the ice. They couldn't get it to go. And the Philadelphia media, absolutely ruthless. They've asked John Tortorella millions of questions, and, he's flat out given them honest answers. And he doesn't have a cap. They don't have a team captain. They don't have they don't have what it takes to potentially win. Or do they? Is this a flash in the pan? I'm going to go with yeah.
Yeah, probably. I think this is something where, Tortorella's coming in, given his hard-nosed style, he's really drilled these guys in postseason, in the preseason camp. A lot of guys, early on fighting for their spot and the favoritism of the coach and whatnot. And you get out to a little bit of a hot start from that. I think talent-wise, I just don't think they have enough to go the distance to be a playoff caliber team over the course of 82 games. I think Tortorella, I don't think they'll be, how do I want to put this? I don't think they're as bottom feeder as people will make it out to be, because Tortorella is the guy. I don't even know what place you put that in, because I think with Tortorella, the way he coaches, the record that he has, they're going to be fairly competitive. They'll probably get you a shock a shock win over a big team every now and then and whatnot, but they'll be a bad team that kind of hovers in a weird place between like top 5 pick bad and somewhere in between, like the top 5 pick bad and just like mediocre bad or something like that.
It's wild to see how they are sitting right now. They're not 4-0, they're 3-1 rather. But regardless, 3 regulation wins. 3 regulation wins is still 3 regulation wins in the beginning of the season that, with players that are not in. Okay.
For all the positives that we're talking about, the Devils, they were one the Flyers smashed them early on.
Yeah, that was another thing, and that was on opening night also. You look at their roster, Mike, and you say to yourself, well, Sean Couturier is their number 1 center. He's out for a long time. Rasmus Ristolainen is on the injured reserve. Owen Tippett, who is the centerpiece of the Claude Giroux deal down in Florida, he's on the injured reserve. And now you're getting to see what Travis Konechny is capable of. You're seeing what James Van Riemsdyk is capable of all of a sudden. He probably won't be there for past the trade deadline. He'll be traded at some point. Carter Hart's looking decent. Ryan Ellis, unfortunately, he's on long-term injured reserve. His career is probably done. There's a lot of positives here with this Flyers team, but again, I don't see them sustaining what they're capable, I don't see them sustaining this positive streak that they're on right now. It's not a sustainable thing, especially for what the mindset and really the culture of this team is right now, and no one really knows what it is. That's the whole thing too. And even coming into this season, John Tortorella had no idea what it was going to be either. Had no idea. Let's keep rolling. We move on to football. And in the NFL, Mike, there is so much chatter because we got a chance to see yesterday, Thursday Night Football. The Saints are so bad that they had a healthy Jameis Winston and they started Andy Dalton. They couldn't figure out that Andy Dalton is not only bad, but he's really bad. Yeah. Granted, they did put up 35 points yesterday, right? He did put on a decent show yesterday. But it also shows too that the defense at one point was one of the best defenses in the league. And now they are, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're almost close to being bottom feeders. They do not look the part. Yeah. And they do have some injuries, but not as many as folks are thinking. The Cardinals, you also saw Kyler Murray, Mike, yelling at Cliff Kingsbury. That's something else too. There was a lot of chatter, and where's our good friend Kyle Madsen too? Where's our good friend Kyle Madsen? We'd love to hear his take on that.
They're just, first of all, let's start with this. It was a great primetime game, like in an NFL season that has seen absolutely garbage games in primetime, especially Thursday Night Football. It's gone absolutely viral and talked about, to death about how bad Thursday Night Football games have been this year. I mean, yeah, bring out the old Rob DeLuca argument that when has it ever been good? But
is true.
It's been all time bad this year, Thursday Night Football. But so at least it was a good treat that yesterday it was a really good, sort of a shootout. Yesterday, 42-34, really good, entertaining game. In terms of the Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury stuff, I mean, it feels like they haven't been hitting as much as you thought the Cardinals were going to be, a little bit more improved this year. The trend that Kingsbury, the last couple of years since coming in as the coach of Arizona, has improved his win total year over year with the team and whatnot. They don't seem to be heading in that positive direction once again of keep on improving wins and getting to that next stage. And the offense doesn't look, as great as you would hope. That's the source of the tension. We all know a lot of the offseason stuff that was going on with Murray and the Cardinals brass that somehow got figured out. But there's light at the end of the tunnel, of course, with DeAndre Hopkins coming back after he fulfilled his 6-week suspension for PED. So he's back. That you hope the offense takes a boost from there, from Arizona's perspective. For the Saints, I mean, this is just so off-brand for them that no matter what, that they've always been a competitive team, especially defensively. They were always going to be a tough out for you and whatnot. And Arizona puts up 42 on them. And just a really bad look and just really shocking what's going on down in New Orleans. 2-5 now on the season.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild to see what's been going on down there in really both spots, in New Orleans, also in Arizona. Arizona, a lot of folks, not named Rob DeLuca, mind you, which I want to just pull up here, his Super Bowl pick. He had Kansas City over Arizona in the Super Bowl. I just want to pull that up here for all of us to see. Kansas City and Arizona. Wow. Just wow. Arizona not only does not look the part, they're banged up on offense. we obviously heard about Hollywood Brown missing a good chunk of the rest of the season. We also did see the trade of Robbie Anderson coming from Carolina over to Arizona, which kind of complements Brown in his absence, which is a very good thing. And obviously, I don't think they would have made that trade if Hollywood Brown, if he wasn't hurt. Because they also have AJ Green back there as the number 3. They also have Greg Dortch as well, who's kind of that floater 3A number 4 wide out. But now with D-Hop coming back, with DeAndre Hopkins coming back, this is a good spot for Robbie Anderson to kind of to take some eyes off of D-Hop for a little bit, just because all eyes are going to be on DeAndre Hopkins when he comes back. But Robbie Anderson might be able to kind of deflect a little bit of that, a little bit of those targets and take some away from D-Hop if there's not if, when there are the he'll be locked down over there. It's very difficult to see with what, and also, yeah, Ian's right. Rondale Moore, I forgot about him. Yeah, I forgot about Rondale Moore too. He was on my fantasy team for a little bit too. I forgot about him too. So now they have a plethora of wide receivers that they're able to. They just simply can't get the offense going in consistency. They're not consistent. That's the issue, I think.
Yeah, I think going to Robbie Anderson, I think too, in terms of taking the eyes off DeAndre Hopkins as he's coming back and whatnot. He's got a lot to prove himself. The reason why he's in this position where he was traded, it did not end well in Carolina, whether they're in the midst of a rebuild or not, or whether they're in denial if they're in a rebuild or whatever, whatever they want to call it. Either way, like his last game, he basically got kicked out of the game by his wide receivers coach, sent to the locker room and all. It seemed like there's a lot of tension with him and the coaching staff and whatnot toward the end. So, this is a big, part of the season for him to prove himself and just shake off that stigma of being a potential locker room problem after, how things are ended in Carolina over the last couple of weeks.
Well, and we saw obviously with the interim head coach and Steve Wilks, and also the entire coaching staff too, he had a whole problem with, and within a day he was shipped out. To the desert. Let's keep moving forward here, Mike. And, obviously with Arizona and New Orleans, that game happened last night to start week number 7. But now we recap week number 6, and we'll preview we'll preview week number 7 rather, instead of reviewing week 6. I don't know why I had that on there, but that's in the past, and a lot of good games did happen. But let's take a peek at week number 7, Mike. There's so many good matches, matchups here this week, and we take a peek, obviously, pretty much throughout all Sunday. The Giants are down in Jacksonville. Hold on. Let's see. Who else do we have here? I know Buffalo is on a bye. That's Detroit and Dallas is another one. New England and Chicago, Monday Night Football. Tennessee, Indiana. The Jets and Denver. That's another good one. Because all of a sudden, the Jets are this 4-2 squad that I guess you can call them a good team. This is a good team that Robert Saleh's putting together.
Yeah, I mean, read the receipts all you want, take the receipts all you want. I mean, right now, as much as that comment was looking bad at first, that they're turning out a really good season so far. As you mentioned, 4-2, and they're going into this regular season contest on the road against Denver, with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, a little bit of some confidence, and a bit of injury concerns, I believe, with Russell Wilson as well. This is a big game that, if the Jets go out and win, I think you really start having optimism about where this season can go.
Well, Cleveland, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Atlanta, Cincinnati, as we did say, Detroit, Dallas, Giants, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Tennessee, Green Bay, Washington, Jets, Denver, Houston, Vegas, Seattle, Los Angeles Chargers, Kansas City, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Miami, Chicago, New England. Those are the rest of the games in week number 7. Mike, for you, let's talk about week number 7 as a whole. What do you want to see happen in any of the games? What do you see as your biggest headline?
Well, it's really the Dolphins, and it looks like if Tua Tagovailoa comes back, of course, there's been a lot of discussion about him and all the concussion stuff, how Miami's been handling it after all the big hits and whatnot. I believe there's an investigation going on into all of that by the NFL. And I believe this is his first game or second game coming back from all of that. So it's an interesting Steelers team that I believe just got a big win last week over the Buccaneers.
Oh yeah.
Kind of a big game for both sides really. Miami, they have this great offense where Tua before the hits was looking good with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. And the defense was looking great as well. And, now it's about kind of getting back on track, getting Tua back and healthy and get that offense rolling again. And the Steelers, again, we say this every year with Mike Tomlin. They're always competitive no matter what. I mean, at quarterback, it was Mitch Trubisky. Now they're bringing in Kenny Pickett, and they're rolling out wins, and they're very competitive. It once again just speaks to how good of a coach Mike Tomlin is.
And also keep in mind, too, there's a reason why Mike Tomlin has been there for so many years. And not only that, too, we remember, obviously, after Coach Bill Cowher retired, who came in to succeed him after. Mike was only 6 years old. It was Mike Tomlin who came right in, and he's been there for as long as I can remember. I remember watching Super Bowl 40 and seeing Coach Cowher and Troy Polamalu going out on top. I know Ian remembers that. He was in college, that old guy over there. He remembers that vividly. Again, Sean Alexander, Matt Hasselbeck, those guys that are, ancient, ancients, absolutely. So, Mike Tomlin has been there for as long as we remember, and he's done such a good job with this team. So yeah, and you see what Ian says also. He remembers Rolling Stones halftime show. Yeah, that's and I guarantee you Mike doesn't even know who the Rolling Stones are.
Oh, only my dad's favorite rock and roll band.
So my biggest game, I guess, to look forward to would be, to be quite honest with you, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's the New York Giants. I am on their train. I believe that they are going to be a force to be reckoned with down the stretch. And I think it will be a battle between them and the Eagles for the NFC East, way down the road. But this is not a game. And I'm not answering Ian's comment yet. You're on the Giants train since when? Since right now. They cannot take Jacksonville lightly. They cannot take Jacksonville lightly because they are a team that is on the upswing.
Yeah.
I believe in the Giants until they come down from this high. That's what I'm going to say. I want to see how long this high is, right? They have they've got a full tank of gas, right? I want to see how long they could go on this tank without having to refill it. Mike, I'm saying this as an unbiased Eagles fan. I don't know if they can refill the tank once it becomes empty. I don't believe so. And the reason why is not because they have so much dead money, because they have guys that they, that Brandon Beane and Shane, Brandon, my goodness,
Yep.
with Shane and Brian Dable, where those two guys have come in and put pieces together, and they're putting it together. I just don't know if they get that crushing loss, if they have the mentality or the experience to get back on the train. I think that and again, I'm saying this very hesitantly because I believe that they're not a flash in the pan. This is a team that is still a couple of years away, but they're doing such a good job that I want to see them go up against this hard-nosed Jacksonville team led by a Super Bowl winning coach who has put the Jags in position to potentially be good next year, I think is the best way to put it. And
Yeah.
Ian said it right. I'm still waiting for the disheartening loss too. Jacksonville could be it. Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, to start off on the positive side, I think the one thing that's been great is that, at this point in the year, you're going into a weekend where it's like I'm really looking forward to watching a Giants game and looking forward to watching Giants football. I think that's the best thing so far about this year is that they've been competitive, that the mentality and culture that Brian Dable has brought and is looking to set in, as much as other coaches have talked about that and whatnot, he's really truly brought that in. And this coaching staff has been unbelievably fantastic so far. This is a case really where they don't have the talent in terms of matching up with other teams, yet the coaching staff has been able to maximize that talent. And
Right.
here we are sitting at a 4-1 start. They're not
5-1.
they're not undefeated. So I mean, I don't think I think you're right. I don't think the Cowboys' loss was disheartening. I think probably you thought they had some chances to win that game, but I mean, there's any year that you wouldn't be surprised that they lose that game. I think if they do lose at Jacksonville, it would feel a bit disheartening. You're thinking it's on the road, yes, but they're playing really well. They seem to be hitting a little bit of a groove. I think a Jacksonville loss would be a bit of a punch in the mouth, a little bit of a reality check. How they respond to that, yes, I think is going to be very interesting because this group and first year under Brian Dable, they're kind of riding this idea of everybody's sleeping on us. We have nothing to lose really in that. This is just a year where we're just trying to improve on last year. These guys all know the reality of the situation, and they know all they're playing for is a job and to just keep on improving. And you just dumb it down to those fundamentals, and that's what it's all about. And I think eventually, if they have that sort of real disheartening loss, I think it's going to be interesting to see where they go, especially under a new coaching staff where anybody involved hasn't had to dealt with that. This roster hasn't had to deal with being a semi-decent team and then all of a sudden having to deal with a big loss or a game that a couple of plays should have gone this way and whatnot, you would have won. So I do agree with you, and I think this weekend will tell a lot about this Giants team.
I still have one more game, but I'll stay here with Ian. I think if they beat Jacksonville, still big if, in my opinion, they could go into the bye week 7-1 with a win at Seattle leading into a bye week. Well, hold on, buddy. Hold your horses, because Seattle all of a sudden is another team that I wanted to preview, but simply just due to time restraints. Seattle is another team that could be 4-3 against the LA Chargers. Consider that a not really a road game down at SoFi. Consider that not really, again, they couldn't really pack out the StubHub Center, the home of the LA Galaxy years ago when they made the move from San Diego to LA the first year, right? Remember that, Mike? That was an absolute disaster for the Chargers. Now, you really think they're going to be able to fill up an 80,000 seat building? Seattle, this is a team that is another team similar to the Giants that they've got nothing to lose. And Geno Smith is out for blood. He wants Giants legend Geno Smith, Ian, keep that in mind. Giants legend Geno Smith is out for blood. Out for blood. And what he wants to prove the haters like Ian wrong and like Casey Bryant wrong. He wants to prove everyone wrong, and he's doing it. He's done it 3 times already. He did it against Russell Wilson on opening night, Monday Night Football. Or I'm sorry, week 2. Week 2. Was it week 2? Yeah, week 1. No, it was week 1. Excuse me. Yeah, week 1. Yeah, go on.
I think they probably realistically, I think they probably wind up splitting these next 2 games going into the bye. I would say they win this week and probably lose up in Seattle next week.
Definitely something to watch out for. But
6-3 going into the bye, probably.
If they win this week, it would be 6-2. If they lose this week, it would be 2 losses because right now they're 5-1.
Yeah.
So that would be if they lose this week, or if they win this week, it'll be 6-1, and if they lose next week, it'll be 6-2.
Yeah.
Which again is not, and initially again,
great position.
And not only that too, keep in mind the gambling odds, right? The gambling odds, Mike, for I think the over under, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think it was like 5.5, 5.5, and they're already at 5. Listen, the people that bet the over, they're going to be very happy once they win. They're going to win 6. It's just a matter of when they do it. San Francisco, as we did say, they are my next team to in terms of the preview. Listen, I don't expect Christian McCaffrey to play. By the way, for those that don't know, Christian McCaffrey was traded from Carolina to San Francisco for a boatload of picks, multiple picks. Now the Panthers brass, they're saying that they're not tanking. We'll get into that in a moment. It's an absolute joke. Well, Mike, I want to hear your thoughts on that and your grievances, how you might want to air them out on David Tepper. Christian McCaffrey, it all depends on his health.
Yep.
San Francisco also is a team, Mike, and again, I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but look at that Super Bowl pick from me. Buffalo over San Francisco. Buffalo over San Francisco. Just keep that in mind, right? I can see San Francisco coming out, and I could see them doing one more move. Maybe. You know what? I take that back. I think that's it for now, because they practically sold off a majority of their future for Christian McCaffrey, who, mind you, missed 22 games in the last however many seasons. 22 games. That's a lot of games. That's a full season plus 4. That's a lot that he's missed. This man is lethal. This man, alongside Deebo Samuel, is going to be an absolute force to be reckoned with. I'm pumped to see what goes on, but from what we're told and what we're seeing now with Ian Rappaport's reports and everything like that, he'll be used in a red zone package only.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty good, but what a trade for San Francisco, though, Mike. This is, if he could stay healthy, I mean, again, you continue to shoot yourself in the foot by basically, lifting the middle finger to Jimmy G and say, all right, go scratch. You're on your own. This is Trey Lance's team. And now you need him. Now you need him. And look how far you've gotten. And I'm not trying to get into the Jimmy G talk. I'm just trying to tell you that Jimmy G now is a part of this equation to win. Again.
Yeah.
And look how they treated him. Look how poorly they treated him.
Yeah, I think sometimes he's made out to be worse than he is. I think by no means, I think he's a great quarterback or anything like that and whatnot. But we've known to see that he's a good game manager.
And he's a winner.
And yeah, he look at his record. He wins games. He wins NFL games. And like you said, exactly, he's going to be part of whatever formula it is for San Francisco to win this year. I think the McCaffrey move, just take Ian Rappaport's tweet so far. If he's going to play and they're used in a red zone packet, boy, that makes fantasy owners happy this week. That could potentially mean a very nice week for Christian McCaffrey fantasy owners. But I think what's the interesting wrinkle in this is how does Debo Samuel's usage get changed? Because he's kind of built this sort of reputation and become this viral sort of sensation in this very hybrid running back wide receiver kind of player and whatnot. Swiss Army knife kind of deal. Now you bring in a more traditional running back, a dynamic weapon in McCaffrey. Does Debo become just more back to the traditional wide receiver situation, much more comfortable for him probably, rather than being right behind the snap and having to take that punishment and whatnot. But we know what Kyle Shanahan has been able to get out of the offensive systems he's able to create, how adaptable it is, and being able to unleash the potential of these guys and whatnot. So I think there's a lot of intriguing possibilities that a McCaffrey deal to the 49ers brings. Maybe you can argue that they gave up a little too much given McCaffrey's recent health. But if he stays healthy, this could potentially be a fantastic move for the 49ers.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, they did give up a lot. They gave up a lot for him, multiple picks. And obviously it was headlined by a 2023 second round draft pick, in addition to a few thirds, a few fourths, a few along those lines there. So that is definitely something that now Carolina is probably going to be using, in their quote unquote retool. Before we get to Carolina and their owner and their brass, Ian says, I'm still curious how they use Jeff Wilson. I don't think they'll abandon him necessarily for an oft-injured Christian McCaffrey. He's been more than effective. Yeah, he has, but I mean, that's something else too. And you also have Elijah Mitchell, who is hurt. He'll be coming back later on in the year. No, he won't. He tore his ACL. Excuse me. So he's done. So it's just Jeff Wilson. Tevin Coleman is there as well. How are they going to use him now? That's a very good question, Mike. How are they going to use Jeff Wilson? And exactly what you said too is that, now obviously they have this dynamic combo in Debo Samuel with what he's able to be. He's able to be this running back / wide receiver. How can they use him and utilize him with CMC? And it's tough, especially with the injury history that McCaffrey brings. How can you use him? How can you use him, Wilson, that is? Wilson also hasn't been getting that many. He's been getting a good amount of looks, but he's gotten chunks taken away by him as well. I'm losing track of the name that took away a few of the touches for Jeff Wilson. I'm thinking about it right now. Give me 1 second. Davis Price. Davis Price was another one who had a few touches taken away from Wilson, and then Coleman got a few. So that running back too is going to be a little bit of something else. Ian says, I'm curious to see how much Christian McCaffrey really moves the needle. There's no prevailing favorite right now in NFC besides Philly. It's wide open. Yeah. I guess San Francisco and Philadelphia NFC Championship. San Francisco wins it. But that's just me right now. Let's move forward here. I want to go to the Carolina Panthers side. Good Lord, it's getting late here. The Carolina Panthers side of things, and looking back now at what had gone on with this trade. Now you look and you say to yourself, okay, they traded a 2023 second, a third, and a fourth, as well as a 2024 fifth-round pick to the Carolina Panthers for Christian McCaffrey. That's a lot. That's a lot for an oft-injured guy who's missed 22 games. 22. It's a lot, but he is dynamic when healthy.
Yeah.
For Carolina, you had the brass come out publicly and say that we're not trying to tank. that this is just, they found the best deal possible and they're not tanking. Well, if that's the case, why trade away Christian McCaffrey? And why not deal with Robbie Anderson? I guess you're trying to make a new culture. You're trying to make a new locker room. You're trying to get the cancer out in Anderson. But Mike, there's also a lot of talk too that DJ Moore, that he could potentially be on the way out. And a landing spot could be up the turnpike up with the Giants. There is a good possibility that the Giants might inquire if they have not already.
Yeah, I think I don't know what Carolina's thinking is in terms of saying it's not a rebuild. I don't know what you call getting rid of a coach and that they had a 5-year contract with in the middle of the season. The quarterback position has been all over the place, and now, of course, dealing McCaffrey and Anderson, and there's talks of possibly more. Obviously we would talk about DJ Moore as well. No pun intended there, but
nice.
But I just don't know where the line of thinking is. Like, they're clearly going through a rebuild. There's nothing to suggest that they're close to winning right now in terms of all the things that I mentioned before with the coach and the lack of a clear, direction at quarterback. Those are obviously the two most important things that you need to have set if you're going to be a winning team going forward. They just haven't looked good this year at all. So I think I don't know why they're denying that they're going into a rebuild, and it's probably what's necessary. In terms of DJ Moore to the Giants, I mean, we'll see what happens. I'd be shocked if Moore stays. I wonder. I think a lot of people will get worried about the, oh my gosh, it's someone else from Carolina kind of stigma and something like that, and how much Dave Gettleman has traumatized this franchise and all that sort of stuff. But we'll see if that comes in. I mean, I think if you look at the Giants wide receiver group, I think you can do a lot worse than bringing in DJ Moore, just on the face value. So we'll see how that sort of transpires. Seems like there could be other grumblings of other wide receivers on the move, maybe in the next couple of days, weeks. Maybe we'll see how things move on that. But Carolina needs to accept their rebuilding and just make the necessary moves to do so.
Yeah, 12 days away. 12 days away from the NFL's trade deadline, November 1. So it's really close. Again, today's October 21, so we still got another 12 days away, the Tuesday, the day after Halloween. Ian says Carolina needs to rebuild now, especially that Matt Rule is out. Nothing says contending like Baker Mayfield. Rebuild time in Raleigh. Let me tell you something, Ian, okay? Believeland. That's all. Believeland. Baker Mayfield, Believeland, okay? It worked out there. And keep in mind also, do you remember years ago when Baker Mayfield led Cleveland to its first win in how many years? And they unlocked the Bud Light refrigerators all around the city. You remember that, Ian? Yeah, he remembers that. That's right. Baker Mayfield, believe in Baker Mayfield, okay? Believe in him. And also believe in Sam Darnold too. Believe in him as well. And also believe in Jake Delhomme as well. Gotta believe in all those guys. Yeah. So all joking aside, though, to me, again, this is a full scale rebuild. This is not something that is going to take overnight. This is going to be over the course of time, and it's unfortunate with what's going on here. I wouldn't be surprised if Darnold gets dealt. I wouldn't be surprised if Baker Mayfield gets some, unless he rots there in Carolina. It's possible, and he would be a bust, officially a bust. Let's move forward, Mike, and let's see what else we've got here in the NFL. Oh, of course, we have to make our picks for week number 7. So with all that said and done, and Ian is with us on Facebook, we see. So maybe Ian could make his pick, or does he not make it? Forget, and he gets one giant X. Ooh, could be. We could do that, or maybe we could have Rob DeLuca bombard him overnight. Ooh, could be. Maybe we have to call his house phone and get him to make his
Oh
pick
my
that way. Ooh. So going back to what we were talking about. Oh, no pick tonight, fellas. Sorry, is what he says. So that means that he's not making his pick and he's gonna forget. And he'll have one giant X. That's gonna be
No, this is something that takes a lot of consideration.
yes,
We as much as we collectively get things wrong in terms of our predictions week over week, this takes time and we want to get this right. We want to have the burden. We want to unburden Rob DeLuca's back. I know Ian had it last year where he was carrying everybody. Now it's been transferred to Rob, but we got to start taking some of that burden off of him. And these are very important picks, Joey.
They are, and when you look at the standings here, Larry Protakowicz, his back is really beginning to hurt, and Ian has pretty much just bent over in half. He's 2-4. He's 3 games back. Him and Casey Bryant, what a disaster. And then you, Mike, you're looking pretty good. You and Evan are at 500, 3-3. DeLuca's 4-2. My back is hurting with the Essential Wrestling Podcast, guys. It's me and LP doing all the heavy lifting here. Like I said, things aren't looking too hot for Ian Schraier, who neglects to make a pick tonight. But like I said, Believeland, that's all you need to know. He's not going to make his pick. He's going to have an X similar to where he had an X with Tampa Bay, last week. Not a good week last week for a lot of the Primetime Rundown guys. You guys all thought that it was going to be Tampa. Yeah. And what a disaster. And Mike, I meant to write down Tampa Bay over Pitt, not Chicago. That's my Tampa Bay over Pittsburgh.
And you got Tampa Bay over Carolina up there too.
Yeah, exactly. What a disaster. Yeah. Tampa Bay lost to Pittsburgh.
Real record, Joey. Real record. A team playing 3 NFL games in one day. Real record. We're making history.
It's true. Oh, man. Oh, well, let me tell you this much. So now Ian's still with us, of course. He says, coincidence that Joey was terrible last year, now great with EWP. Collusion. Oh!
Whoa.
Oh, okay. All right. Ian then says, you'll have my pick. And then he then says, this graphic designer needs to spend more time working on the fine print. I think I might throw all that work on Ian because the graphic designer, you're looking at him. I make my own stuff. I don't need no one else's stuff. Okay, now let me make my pick while Ian doesn't and sits here watches us with popcorn on his lap. Again, we took a peek here and we see Ian says, "Oh, really? Had no clue." Yeah, I mean, it's if he actually paid attention and if he actually made his picks, he would know. But instead, Rob DeLuca has to bombard him, and then he'd have a clue. So we continue on here, Mike. For you, you're 3-3. You're 500. I'm 5-1. I'll make my pick later. Mike, you picked Tampa Bay last week. It was not great. Everyone was on the Tampa Bay train for the last 2 weeks. First week was good. Second week was not good. Mike, your pick. Who do you got?
I am going with the Green Bay Packers, hopefully to make a bounce back after getting walloped by the state of New York in the past 2 weeks against the Washington Commanders, who see your good old friend Carson Wentz going down. And it's the Taylor Heineke show this week. I think Green Bay should take care of them easily. If they don't, I don't know what to do anymore this season.
Listen, all I can say is that don't bend your back completely on the floor like our good friend Ian Schraier, okay? Make sure that you're first off, make sure it's a good thing you're making your picks, but take a good amount of time and think about the picks before you're just thinking about them off the cuff, right? And I did the exact same thing. You know who my pick was? The New England Patriots going head-to-head with the Chicago Bears. It is going to be one-sided affair. New England wins Monday Night Football. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's going to be a disaster. It will be the Zappy show. That's it. That's pretty much all you can say. New England is in line to win this one against a lowly Bears team. that will be most likely selling off Roquan Smith, will definitely be selling off Robert Quinn before the deadline. And this team is pretty much headed for Arlington Heights, suburbs of Chicago. And that's pretty much all that they've got to look forward to for the rest of 2022. Mike, we unfortunately will not have enough time to chat about Big East Media Day since we were there, but we will be doing some fun projects with that moving forward. So we'll be taking a peek at that, in our instant reaction series before the season starts. A little bit of sports updates as well. The Philadelphia Union, Andre Blake scored the game-winning goal last night against FC Cincinnati down in Chester, about half hour south of me. The Union there onto the Eastern Conference Final, and of course our good friend the McGlynn brothers. Jack McGlynn was the starting midfielder, starting midfielder for the Union last night. Really cool stuff to see that he is on the pitch and he is in the first 11. Really amazing stuff there. Elijah Moore from the Jets, he requested trade out of New York, which is a hilarious thing at 4-2. He had 0 targets against Green Bay, and the Jets flat out said already that they're going to sit him against the Broncos. They don't care, but they will not trade him. That's something else too. So that is an ongoing saga that we expect will last quite a while. Also, the Texas Rangers hired former Giants manager Bruce Bochy to a 3-year deal, and that's a big deal because Bruce Bochy, we thought that after San Francisco, everything was going to be done with him. Not the case. And of course, Gabriel Landeskog from the Colorado Avalanche, 12 weeks he will be out due to knee surgery. So those are your sports updates here at the final few minutes of the Primetime Rundown. Mike, let's get you the kudos. Let's get our kudos underway, and you first.
Well, the kudos, came out with this week, the story. We bring it back to the Big East, and that's Jay Wright's going to be on the broadcast calling games with CBS. Will be on the March Madness and Final Four calls, and they'll have him on some games this year. So, of course, he leaves the Villanova job, but not going that far, and he'll be around the picture, I'm sure. They'll probably have a Big East game or two here and there that he'll feature on, and just fantastic stuff. A great mind, Jay Wright. We know, his name comes, without introduction. No need for an introduction there. Fantastic career the last 2 decades at Villanova. Fantastic mind, and be a great asset and great to see on broadcasting this year and give his analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. And also something else too, I guess, for me, would be Todd Gurley. For all of those that do not remember, but obviously Super Bowl 53, Todd Gurley and the entire Rams team did not look themselves. Todd Gurley did not look himself whatsoever, Mike, against New England. And that was pretty much the last of Todd Gurley that we saw. He has degenerative knee issues. So his career, he announces that he's done playing football, or he's not 100%, but probably done playing football. But despite all of that, we have not seen Todd Gurley for the last few years since he was with Atlanta. So my kudos goes to Todd Gurley, and to wish him well in his post football career. That at one point when he was with the St. Louis Rams, things looked fantastic, and then eventually it went downhill from there for Gurley. So that concludes our main portion of the show, Mike, and we had a pretty good one here tonight. Of course, the Phillies and the Padres are going on right now. Phillies are still up 1-0, which is a big deal down here in South Jersey. Let's get you to the final segment of our show, which, of course, is we make sure that we always talk about our good friends at the Essential Wrestling Podcast, presented to you by ProWrestlingPick'em.com. Tuesday, October 25th at 5 p.m., join our guys, Al Carl, John DeConnie, John Smith, and Gary Miheffi for all of the upcoming stuff within the world of wrestling. Tonight, I think right now going on, WWE SmackDown going on, Halloween Havoc is going on, I believe, tomorrow. So that'll be a big deal for the guys. Please check out their article that they posted, EasternObserver.com. They post all of their their previews and their match thoughts, or who might win those matches. So definitely some fun stuff there if you are a wrestling fan. Of course, also, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to subscribe to us on the following platforms: Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Odyssey. By searching the Primetime Rundown. And of course, if you'd like to see our beautiful faces, please search the Eastern Observer on YouTube. And the same thing goes with our friends at the Essential Wrestling Podcast. And instead of searching Primetime Rundown, exactly same place, just search the Essential Wrestling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, one final time for my co-host, Mike Szabo, our good friend Ian Schraier, who was watching with us. We thank him for all of the comments that he did provide us here tonight. He is also a co-host of ours. I'm Joey Jarzynka. For all of us here at the Primetime Rundown, the Eastern Observer, and the Blackjack Media Group, we will see you all in 2 weeks, November 4th. And as we get you set to go for episode number 102. See you in a couple of weeks.